Hey visionaries, Charles Lawton here with Rural Realty Group. Whether you're an investor, a first-time home buyer, or an agent looking for a team, our goal here is to help you attain wealth using real estate. Follow us on all social media platforms at Rural Realty Group TX. Now enjoy the show with Cup and Mo.
Glynn and Josh, if you guys were smoking, what would you two be smoking?
So I am smoking right after we finish. I'm in Atlantic City going on tour for the next 2 or 3 days to visit retailers and manufacturers in the cigar industry. But as soon as we finish, I'm going to have a Padron Damaso. And then I also, funny story, have my own cigar that Glenn knows, El Politico, which we are raising money for our legal advocacy through the sale of these coming up in February and March. Project that I worked on in Nicaragua with Luciano from Ace Prime and the Pichardo factory. So that's kind of my pet project. I always will smoke one of those with most fun evenings. So,
How about you, Glenn?
Well, I might be in a hotel room, but they're never far away. So let's turn this into a contest. I'll smoke what's next based upon what I pull out of the bag.
I like it.
So let's see here. No, that one's junk. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Nobody knows what it was. One of my new favorite cigars, the Rocky Patel 60. An oldie but goodie that Eric Espinosa has issued in partnership, I think, with Rocky or on the distributorship. But y'all remember the Espinosa 601?
Yes, sir. And
let's go down one more. These will be my top 3 cigars when Glenn's out of the hotel room. A McAuliffe, which is down your way in Texas.
Yep.
Al is a great friend of the industry, and I think the last time I smoked one, I was in the Silver Leaf Cigar Bar in Fort Worth, Texas.
Out in Fort Worth, yeah.
See, a bona fide cigar tourism destination, one of the classiest cigar bars I have ever been in.
Very, very true.
and I had one of those Mil Dias before we got on the program just before dinner, which I think is very similar. It might be a different size than the one that you're smoking right now, because I think that's an Ace Prime, the band there. Let me see that. Yep, that's Mil Dias. That's just a special edition. Those are fantastic cigars. So Luciano, who makes that with Crown Heads, he's the one who produced my cigar, El Politico.
It's very good. I was pleasantly surprised, and apologies on the name because I got it. Yeah, Mil Diaz. Very pleasantly surprised. It's a good. You can see that the burn is really good too. So good ash on that. So very happy with it.
I'm planning to visit out. Glenn and I are on the road. Glenn works in state capitals and does calls throughout the day. We're in the middle of the state legislative cycle, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about. But we're planning on going on the road and hearing firsthand from our members and some of the concerns that are going on from a legislative regulatory perspective, and hearing from consumers retailers and manufacturers. What are the issues of the day? What's going on locally, and how we can help. And Jay, one of our board members, I'm hoping to visit later this month. Blue Smoke in Dallas. He's one of the guys that when there's a special release cigar, Glenn and I usually will buy from Jay because he usually has it first.
Well, when you guys come down here, please look us up so we can, get together and burn one properly.
Absolutely.
Both of y'all in Dallas?
Yes, sir, we are.
So our buddy Kent Pennington's down there, not far away.
Well, I'm sure as this relationship continues to grow, we're all going to get to know each other very, very well.
Yeah. Well, and Dallas I think, Dallas, Atlanta, Charleston, there's a couple of cities that are emerging cigar markets, and you have a lot of variety there. The Atlanta, Georgia area, I was recently there, and I'm, mystified at the different lounges that are popping up. And but Dallas is another one. Dallas, Fort Worth, you go across there, and Phoenix is the third one. Phoenix, Dallas, and Atlanta. I think anywhere around the country, I'm most impressed with those markets and how they're continuing to grow year after year. And we look at the numbers of stores closing, stores opening, and that's another positive sign of the brick and mortar industry. You're seeing more cigar lounges, cigar bars, cigar shops open. And that's something that, we're trying to help and make it easier for small business owners through the PCA to have a safe legislative environment at the local, state, and federal level where they can build businesses like that in those areas and beyond.
All right, let's have another contest. A place that you never would have thought of as having a real, true, bona fide cigar culture that you just would not have thought of. Take a wild, name one or two or three places in America that you wouldn't have thought of traditionally for having a cigar culture.
Sacramento, Iowa, everywhere in Iowa, and I'll say Alaska.
All right, my answer is Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah.
You could spend an entire long weekend, a long holiday weekend in Omaha, greater Omaha, and drive from Lincoln to Omaha and not hit all the great cigar shops that are out there. Absolutely stunning, beautiful places that I just never would have thought it. And I was in this was several years ago. I was out there giving some legislative testimony on a cigar bar bill. And it was the same weekend as the Nebraska Cigar Festival. And I was in a relatively new lounge that had just opened. And he was telling me the most fascinating story, that Omaha gets cigar tourists from Chicago because there's no cigar bars in Chicago. There's amazing cigar shops, absolutely amazing cigar shops. But they bring a bus down and nobody has to drive. And they just go from cigar lounge to cigar lounge to cigar lounge. And I thought, this is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Well,
really
let me ask you this as we really open this thing up. You guys are clearly on the front lines day to day for the PCA, the Premium Cigar Association. You see things firsthand, when it comes to government regulations. I hate to use the word, but it's the only thing that kind of sticks in my head at the moment. The word, you guys see the attack on the industry as a whole. I mean, what would you say, again, from two guys who are on the front lines every day, like what would you say is the biggest pressing issue that's affecting or that could possibly affect the cigar industry right now as we speak?
I think Glenn and I might have some different answers on this one. Maybe the same, but I think that the biggest threat is a combination of everything in the legislative process. It takes time. The regulatory process, it takes time. And there's some recourse. So the FDA is normally my stock answer of it's the biggest threat to the industry. But recently we've been diving into issues with other companies and private businesses and how they operate and view tobacco products. So everything from payment processing to event promotion, social media, the ability as a retailer to promote your business, to finance your business, to have the basic foundations that most other businesses enjoy, is being taken away in some sense, in some areas. And this is a new area, that kind of external relations or corporate relations that we're trying to work on, where we can get people all riled up and they can write to their member of Congress, their state official, and that's a good part of the time that Glenn and I spend, along with Ryan and Patrick on our team. But it's the ones that we don't really have any recourse. There's no election, there's no vote, there's no proceeding. It's a social media platform saying, we don't like tobacco, we're pulling all of your ads, we're demonetizing this, we're taking the TheVisionLab off of a streaming service. Things like that I see in the next 5 to 10 years as the biggest threat to the growth of the industry, because yes, we are defending and protecting the industry, but last year we were able to fight off all 50 state, or there were no tax increases in all 50 states that went through. There was no tax increase, although we had a significant threat at the federal level. So those were pushed back, and thanks to consumers, cigar media such as yourself, really answering the call, retailers and manufacturers, the industry working in concert. But I think that outside of the walls of government, there's an increasing threat and pressure by the public health groups. They're not succeeding federally, so then they go to the states. They're not succeeding in the states, then they're going locally. And when they don't do that locally, then they're pushing it outward to companies or international, where we're protected by the Constitution, the First Amendment, free speech. But you look at other countries, they don't have those freedoms. So you're seeing things like in New Zealand, where they're coming up with crazy things that will eventually prohibit the purchasing of tobacco products in the entire country.
From my perspective, and I hate to be philosophical about it, but I think it's the fear of the unknown. I never cease to be amazed by the creativity of our opposition. And for those folks that live under horrible tax structures or regulatory environments, I hate to be cynical about it, but I've said for a long, long time, it can always get worse. And Josh alluded to what's happening in New Zealand, where if you're born after January 1, 2000, you can't buy tobacco products even after you turn 31 or 41 or 51. If you were born after January 1, 2000, you can't buy tobacco products. And just tonight, I was just circulating the story to the guys. Brookline, Massachusetts has done the exact same thing. Brookline, Massachusetts. Nobody knows where Brookline, Massachusetts is. But now that they've just made CNBC tonight, I just posted this on my Facebook page. This is how bad ideas spread. It's de facto prohibition all over again. And you can just picture, I don't want to give them any ideas, so I won't list them. But the places around the country that would hear this story tonight and go, oh, what a great idea. Let's do that. Let's put that in front of city council, or let's promote that as a state legislative bill. I've seen some stupid stuff over the last longer than that, 15 years of involvement in the politics of cigars. I'll never forget when the Icelandic parliament proposed that nicotine, to touch anything with nicotine, it had to be prescribed by a doctor.
Oh, wow.
It was an actual bill in the Icelandic parliament. Well, what happened? Somebody in the Oregon legislature thought that was a really cool idea. Let's propose it out there. Now, did it happen? No. But I say this just to dramatize how bad ideas spread. So one jurisdiction says, we're going to ban smoking in everything, including cigar shops. And all of a sudden, Monterey, California says, oh, that's a great idea. I think I'll do that. The FDA proposed banning flavored tobacco products. They haven't done it, but just because they said it, dozens upon dozens of states and cities are proposing flavor bans, getting ahead of ahead of the FDA. They've proposed numerous things in the past that they never enacted at the federal level. And they were horrible ideas, but states and cities latched onto them. Do I say this as a gloom and doom for the future of the industry? Absolutely not, because the industry is successfully fighting off these things, whether it's in the halls of Congress or city halls or state capitals or in the courts. This industry has defended itself, and it's more politically organized than it and organized in several different levels, better than it ever has been in its history. And having cigar-friendly places like the cities in Texas, and there is no statewide smoking ban in Texas, and that's a blessing, but it's also a curse, because what's happened? Cities can crack down on smoking, but the unincorporated counties around them don't have to. So you end up with a patchwork of places where you can go and where you can't go. And there's examples of that all over the country. But we're better prepared as an industry to fight off these things and to defend it and to promote good, positive legislation than we ever have been in our entire history.
So as we really open things up, we haven't properly introduced you guys. Ladies and gentlemen of the TheVisionLab podcast, please welcome Glynn Loope and Joshua, hope I said it correctly, Habursky. Did I say it correctly?
That's correct.
Yes, of the PCA, the Premium Cigar Association. We couldn't be more excited to have them in the lab. As you can tell, there's a lot going on when it comes to the FDA, just government regulations as a whole that could have a possible effect on the industry. And we just kind of felt like, it was only right to have, the Cigar Association essentially for all smokers on the show at some point in time, and we made it happen. So thank you again for you guys for being on.
Anytime.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I mean, it's an important medium to spread the word of what's going on, and we got a lot of work cut out for us this year. And last year we had some good achievements and success, and we're trying to build off those. I like to tell folks that I'm a consumer first, and we want to, and Glynn is a consumer first. So we want to go and be able to enjoy cigars, the camaraderie, to have the tough conversations, to really bring people together from all different walks of life. The cigar lounge is the melting pot, and that to me is important. The small business side is also important. I firmly believe if that you are opening up a business, if you're a restaurateur or working on doing creative synergetic business plans, where, for instance, in Pittsburgh, where I went to college, there's a gun range that has the sale of cigars. There's barber shops that sell cigars. That you should be able to be creative. And if people want to go to those places, and enjoy a cigar, a coffee shop, a Cuban sandwich shop, we want to afford people those opportunities where cigars can be central to it in some businesses and can be complementary with other things. So, Glynn talked about positive legislation, being able to enjoy an adult beverage with a cigar, pairing them, whether it's a fine wine or a scotch or a bourbon. That's something that we're tackling. Glynn has worked on many local areas in the past with that. Last year in Athens, Georgia, that ordinance was passed. We're working, I know last year fell short, but Louisville, Kentucky, those are important areas. Of course, you have the Masters nearby, major sporting event. You have the Kentucky Derby. and the connectiveness of sports and cigars. You notice after anybody wins a championship, they're not smoking a cigarette. If you lose, you're not smoking anything. If you win, you're smoking a cigar.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Joe Burrow's making that real popular right now.
Hey, Joe Burrow's the man right now.
Yeah.
It's like, even if you're not a Bengals fan, you're rooting for Joe Burrows. You're like, all right, what's he going to smoke today after the win?
Yeah, it's really cool, like to hear directly from the horse's mouth, if you will, when it comes to the issues that face the industry on a day-to-day basis. From you guys' standpoint, right? This being the Vision Lab, when you guys first got involved with PCA, what did you two, and I know you're not like, quote unquote on a team, if you will, but what did you two envision as you started versus what it is you guys see and do now on a daily basis?
What a unique question.
Yeah. This is the first time we got this. We've done probably 50 different media events so far, and this is a first. So I'm going to defer to the elder statesman on this one.
Oh, God, he used that line the other night.
We're going to get in your office an elder statesman plaque.
When I started this gig, I had a full head of hair.
Oh, man.
You can't tell, but this is thinning over here and getting gray.
Well, I'm lying.
There's a reason why I have a hat on right now.
All right, pose the question again. When we first started, what was our expectation?
When you first started, what did you envision when you officially became part of the higher part of the food chain, the PCA? What did you initially envision, and then essentially transpose that against what it is you see now on a day-to-day basis?
Excellent question. I have seen a lot of changes in this industry in the last 15 years. This last year was my 15th trade show. And I started out as an advocate for the Cigar Association of Virginia. In my first few shows, I was just, Joe consumer going along with the retailers that invited me to go and take in and learn about the show. And to grow up and then have the opportunity to be a part of a truly national movement. And I think, I don't say that flippantly. I think my expectation was, both during my days with CRA and now with PCA, we are on the cut. Josh knows well. He's been in politics long enough to know this, even though he's the young one among us. We've been doing this for a very short period of time in the scope of politics, a short period of time. And in that short period of time, so much has happened to make this industry such a far more politically sophisticated advocate venue for an amazing industry. During the first boom, nobody thought this stuff was going to happen to them. Regulation, inordinate levels of taxation, equating premium handmade cigars to big tobacco. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody. Everybody thought they were the fine wine. Everybody thought they were the single barrel scotch. Everybody thought we're a luxury product. Nobody's going to attack us. And all the while, the opposition was creeping up behind them. And if you read the final deeming rule on cigars from the FDA, they did everything humanly possible to make sure that there was no difference between a cigar and a pack of cigarettes. And I'm not being dramatic by saying that. That was their goal. That was their intent. It's still their intent. But the expectation to be a part of a truly national movement. And every day when Josh and I come to work, I think about, how are we going to grow cigaraction.org to be a truly representative national database of consumers that we can turn the political switch on, and tens upon thousands of consumers will reach out to their elected officials to defend us when we need to be defended, whether it's in a city hall, a state capitol, or in the halls of Washington. This is probably one of the most exciting times politically. This is one of the most exciting times in the industry on two fronts. One, it's the most exciting time politically because we are successfully fighting off, or we are prepared to fight the next battle better than we ever have been before. We've got more research, we've got more expertise, we've got more analysis, we got more studies and research, we've got more the work of consultants that have taken place over the last 5 to 8 years. We are better armed now than we ever have been in our history. On the second front, and to quote my dear friend Jorge Armenteros at Tobacconist University, we're living during a renaissance of cigar making. Some of the greatest cigars that have ever been created have been created in the last 5 to 7 years, the last dozen years. I mean, some of the amazing, amazing cigars have just entered the market since the final rule of the FDA was issued in 2016. So we are living in a phenomenal time when, one, retailers are being successful. Two, manufacturers are selling what they make. Three, guys like you and I are able to enjoy some of the greatest cigars in history. And lastly, we're able to better to defend this industry against those who want to take this simple pleasure away from us.
Yeah.
So that's the expectation of coming into this. I know that's very philosophical, but that's the way we need to approach this. We need to think, we're not just lighting up a cigar. We're lighting up a moment in time. And that's the way we got to think about it. We're defending that moment.
I like it. I love it. And this is for either one of you. I was unfamiliar with PCA, right, until of recent, and I'm sure a lot of consumers are, as well as retail owners. And since we're talking about the word expectation, what does the PCA footprint look like in the eyes of the consumer as well as the retail owners?
Yeah, so PCA, we represent the brick and mortar retailers nationally in the United States. We also have associate members, which are the manufacturers. We're known, for our advocacy. I like to think that it's the crown and jewel of the association, but I might be biased a little bit working in government affairs. But we're also known for the trade show, which brings the manufacturers and retailers together. It's the largest gathering of the industry globally. And, I think the expectations for consumers with PCA, we've been doing a lot of creating new resources that retailers can share with their customers. Like our core audience is to protect the business of retailing of premium cigars and pipe tobacco. So we deal with, and Glenn and I are calling retailers, getting them to testify, to write letters, to speak out at city council meetings on a host of different issues. And we created Cigar Action 4 years ago. And actually, when before I started with the organization full time, I was a consultant for PCA for a year working on cigaraction.org, which is an all-encompassing retailer and consumer resource where you can go on there, take 30 seconds, send a letter to your member of Congress, oppose for instance, in Florida right now, we're fighting them trying to prohibit smoking on beaches and public parks. When I go to Florida, I love walking down South Beach with a cigar. To me, that's iconic. And, we want to defend that. So we've worked with retailers to testify in Tallahassee at the state legislature in opposition to that bill. And then we've also crafted grassroots campaigns on Cigar Action. To answer the question before on the expectation and reality, I think that I expected this to be my dream job. And in reality, it is my dream job, but I expected also that the I didn't understand the depth and breadth of all the issue areas. Like I knew cigars and the basics of it and some of the things that I saw as a consumer, as someone that was engaged, even when I was a consultant, being in-house and working for the PCA, we see a lot more to the organization. So the issue areas that we talked about beyond just tobacco, looking at the international sphere and being concerned about the farmers and factory workers in Nicaragua and Honduras and the Dominican Republic, the people that make the products that we enjoy, and the global impact of that, how manufacturers that sell cigars to our retail members, that they buy, they purchase and provide schools and clinics and roads in these countries, and that the void of the industry and the constriction of the industry would have a negative effect internationally on a global scale. So I think it's important to understand that there are 3 million plus consumers of premium cigars, but there are also hundreds of thousands of people that have a vested interest to their livelihood. It puts food on their table. And, it was a dream job because I enjoy cigars. Now my thought process has changed a lot where, yes, I still enjoy cigars passionately, but I'm thinking about all those other people that have much more at stake than even I do, and how we can help them defend their businesses and allow them to grow so that other people get to enjoy, as all of us do, to be brothers and sisters of the leaf.
It's so funny you said that about thinking about those who did it. I remember giving some speeches at the Nicaragua Cigar Festival years ago, and I came back to the States, and I was giving another speech, and I said, listen, if you ever get to look into the eyes of the person who rolled you that cigar, you will never smoke it the same way again.
It's we haven't had the opportunity as a collective yet to go to a factory, but it's something that's definitely on our bucket list. And as you guys have been talking, I keep hearing the word retailers. And one of the retailers who has been supportive of us since day one is Edwina Brown and the family at Blow and Smoke Cigar Lounge in Lancaster, Texas. The address is 1604 North I-35 in Lancaster, Texas. Visionaries, if you're anywhere on the southern part of the Metroplex, make sure you get to Blow and Smoke Cigar Lounge. They just recently had their ribbon cutting ceremony. Congratulations again on the brand new location, guys. Again, it's Blow and Smoke Cigar Lounge. Big sign off the side of the freeway. You can't miss it. I want to shift gears, right? So now we've kind of got the lay of the land in regards to what PCA is all about and what you guys do. What are some of the biggest misconceptions or falsehoods that you guys have encountered as you've been out on the road and as you've been fighting on the front lines for the tobacco industry as a whole?
Well, I think in terms of misconceptions, the most common one that we get is that premium cigars are just a big cigarette. And we hear that from, elected officials. You would not believe how many members of Congress and their staff believe that. And it's something that Glenn and I know, and we've been doing this long enough, you're never going to change the hearts and minds of everyone. And I think that that's the toughest thing to understand, because, when you see it, when you experience it, and you get that enjoyment and that passion, and then you see the folks that have their livelihoods connected to it, it's disheartening sometimes when you see people not understand that, premium cigars are vastly different than all other tobacco products. We spend a lot of time federally educating lawmakers between usage patterns, health effects, what a premium cigar is, whole leaf tobacco, vegetable gum, and water. It's an organic product. It's not mechanized. 200 people will touch that cigar before someone's smoking it. So that artisanal craft and explaining that, we did a public engagement series where we opened our office up right near Union Station in Washington, D.C., and had events and taught people about the ins and outs, whether it's the historic J.C. Newman factory in Tampa, Florida, and their story of being around 100+ years, or Hand Rolled, the documentary that Pete Johnson and Tatawahe. We wanted to show people that cigars are beyond tobacco. They're not just tobacco. And I think that, correcting some of those misconceptions, it's freezing cold outside. We're not out there getting a hit of a premium cigar because it has to fuel a nicotine addiction. So like those intricacies, and it's important, and we don't throw other things under the bus. We're here to promote premium cigars, but we have to acknowledge those distinctions, or else we're going to get regulated in the same way as those other products. And that I would say is the biggest misconception that I see, from the federal perspective.
I think Josh summed that up.
Well, for me, I'm really big into the mindset, right? As you are approaching, fighting for our freedoms to and the abilities to have our smoke, how it sounds like to me, you guys are often having to be extremely creative as well as educational to win these battles on the front line. Can either one of you kind of talk about that, and what that process looks like?
I'll tell you, there's some great examples of that. One, like I said a few moments ago, no one thought this stuff would happen to them. And this being, assault for new levels of taxation or federal regulation or some state and local governing body coming after you like never before. The things that I've witnessed and it's truly excited me. When I started advocating for the guys in Virginia in 2006, I told them, I said, you're no longer just a tobacconist. You're no longer just a tobacconist. Politics is now officially in your job description. And in a very short period of time, so many retailers have taken those words to heart. And I'll never forget, I was in a congressman's office from Illinois, southern part of the state, not anywhere near Chicago, rural conservative area. And there's one cigar shop in the congressman's district, one. And during my meeting, we facilitated a call from that one cigar shop. One, the congressman was totally unaware of our federal issues at the time. Had no reason to be supportive at all, was not a cigar smoker, and had no, strong feelings one way or the other. During that meeting, we facilitated this call from the owner of the cigar shop to the congressman. And I watched a guy turn in 10 seconds and say, I'm with you. The cigar shop has premised it with the words, Congressman, I've never asked you for anything, but I'm asking you to support us on this. And I was watching him and listening to the phone conversation. I could feel the tide turning. And to have one cigar shop change the mind or make an advocate out of one member of the United States Congress proved to me what's possible across this country. Unfortunately, that has not been true with Senator John Cornyn of Texas. And I throw that up because you guys are down there. But I've watched members of Congress react and change because of the outreach from a handful of consumers or a handful of cigar shops. And it just proves to me day in and day out what's possible. As far as creativity is concerned, I don't know how much of it is creativity as it is the industry is now playing the game. The industry is now using tried and true political strategies to defend itself. And for many, for a lot of these people, it's the first time in history they've been called upon to play politics, to defend not just the industry, but to defend their livelihood. I was with Jeff Borshwitz, owner of Corona Cigar Company down in Florida, and we were meeting with the former Speaker of the House, John Boehner, and Jeff looked at him square in the eye and says, "Mr. Speaker, I've put my entire life into building this company, and now our federal government wants to come along and take it away from me." When you get cigar retailers across the country confronting their political leadership like that, this industry will be able to defend itself well into the future. So I'm not so sure it's so much creativity as it's now in the game. It's now in the game, and there's no turning back.
And to echo Glenn's thoughts on that, I think a lot of it is how to communicate and who's the messenger, getting the different players in the industry involved, whether it's consumers or retailers or manufacturers, and who they're communicating to, whether it's Congress or in the courts, through the association, whether it's us as hired professionals. You have to be able to call an audible. I think that's what it really comes down to. That when we get most creative, it is because we get pinned into a situation that we were unaware of for a certain period of time. But then the realization, and you kind of have to adapt accordingly. Recently we had a study with the National Academy of Sciences where we had to present. The industry had to present. They're doing this on the health effects and usage patterns of premium cigars at the request of the Food and Drug Administration. And Drew Newman and I were asked to present, and we were supposed to have 3 minutes to present evidence and kind of give a summary. We were doing a written statement plus this oral statement to the 15 medical professionals, doctors that are comprised of this committee. And they never told us that there was going to be question and answer period after that. So Drew and I got peppered for an hour and 15 minutes. And I'm not a doctor. I understand the research and I understand what's presented there, but I was sweating bullets, and I had to call audibles. And sometimes saying I don't know or let me get back to you is the best answer. We can't have all the answers. So kind of stepping back and assessing the situation, calling that audible, and finding people that know what they're doing, and getting information from those trusted authorities. We're working on some tech policy issues right now, and we're working with the tech vendors that are in the premium cigar space and calling up associations in that area and doing fact finding, so that we're better equipped to take on those new issues that are arising that I referenced before about social media.
So I have to ask, you guys have sat in the offices, the back rooms, if you will, with politicians and said, hey, we need you guys' support. Has there ever come a time where you sat in the office of a guy and publicly he's the opposition, but lo and behold, you guys wind up having a cigar with him?
I'll answer that real brief. Many times.
How does that conversation go?
Well, I mean, there are members of Congress that don't publicly want to be associated with tobacco products. It's not politically advantageous. The public health groups have a ton of money. They have a ton of people. So, they will do what they can, or they'll passively support. What bothers me with the politicians that will smoke cigars or will see them at events, and then will go ahead and introduce or co-sponsor or support legislation that attacks what we do after we have a conversation with them. So, it is a little bit, they're doing political calculations. Where do we fit in? And Glenn's example of the one shop having that impact is rare, because a lot of it is a numbers game. People vote. So how can we showcase your grass tops, your business owners, and your grassroots, your average consumers? How can we showcase a full footprint of those people to offset all these other groups that are out there that are saying that cigars are big cigarettes, are bad for you, should be banned, all of that stuff. So it's a competitive environment. In DC and in the state capitals, it gets ugly where, there's a statement that is released and the next day it changes or their position changes, and you see a lot of that.
Well, partner, I think we have reached that part of the interview. Gentlemen, thank you again for your time. This has been, I know from Cuff and my standpoint, this has been extremely educational. When we first got connected, we both thought to ourselves, this would be really, really fun. And it's been everything and then some. As we wrap the show up, we have a segment that's called Landing the Plane. One of the questions that we ask everybody on the show, and this is for both of you, there is a round table. You're there and there are 5 other seats. Who are the 5 other people you want at your table? Obviously, cigars are there. Josh, I'll let you answer first. Who's at your round table?
Whew, that's tough. Are they all living or can they be from history?
Living or dead?
The only stipulation is you can't have whatever religious deity you believe in.
Okay, I would say obviously stock answer is Winston Churchill. I would love to have a cigar with him. Coach Mike Ditka. I would love to have his perspective. Probably one, that's a little bit more controversial, but was an avid cigar smoker, Al Capone. The genres of movies and books that I read are all either old school Westerns or mafia movies. So I'm going to do another one from one of those genres, Clint Eastwood, although he smokes the short cigars.
Now, they don't all have to be cigar smokers either.
Oh, well, I would probably change my answers a little bit, but I'm going to stick with all cigar smokers on that one. So, the acting side, it's always that last one that kind of gets you.
That's why we asked the question.
Easy one. Michael Jordan.
Very good. Very good. Glynn, what about you, sir?
Well, I've had a cigar with Mike Ditka, and he was funny as I'll get out. All right, I'll try to put some different twist on this. I've got to have the cigar with Winston Churchill. I'm going to throw in another politician. I'd like to, John F. Kennedy. A lot of stuff I'd like to talk to him about today if he were around.
I believe you're the first one to say JFK.
That's correct.
Yeah, and he was obviously didn't mind being photographed with a cigar in his hand.
Amen.
I'm gonna throw in 2 different ones that I have seen photographs of them enjoying cigars, and I've got a lot of questions for both of them. Steven Tyler and Mick Jagger.
Ooh. Cuff, I think that's 2 more new ones, if I remember correctly, Cuff.
He's got 3.
I'm a hard rock fan. I'm a drummer. Just recently, I saw a picture of Jagger on their tour smoking a cigar, and I've seen many, many pictures of Steven Tyler enjoying a cigar. Matter of fact, he'd be a cool cover, Cigar Aficionado. That's 4, right?
Yep. Got 1 more seat left.
The proverbial 5th seat. I'm going to go with, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go with one that I know and that I've smoked a cigar with, and I'd never get enough time with him. Actor Armando Santi.
Ooh.
He's been on the cover of Cigar Aficionado. He is an amazingly nice fellow. He's so approachable, but he is so philosophical about cigars. And he's getting ready to do a new cigar with the Plasencias.
One of my favorites. Armand
is working on a project with them, and when he did Will Cooper's Coop cigar show about, I think it was sometime before the holidays, he and I started texting right after the interview was going on, and he loves the industry, and after he comes out with that cigar, we ought to get him on your show.
That would
Please
be
do.
awesome.
Yes,
Placencia is
that'd be-
one of my personal favorites.
So those are my 5.
Absolutely love that. I too want to echo what Mo said. Thank y'all so much for being on to the show. I know that Josh, earlier before we jumped into the lab, you talked about a road show. Can you give us some insight on what that's about?
Yeah, so we are back in full swing. You know, we had a good trade show last year. That was the bounce back year, and now we're in full swing. And our government affairs team, Scott Pierce, our executive director, Greg Zimmerman, our president, Glenn, myself, Ryan Parada, our government affairs manager. We're going out to retail stores across the country, meeting with manufacturers. I'll be in Ridgewood, New Jersey tomorrow with Gary Colsair, who is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to premium cigars and pipe tobacco. And then I will be at Empire Cigar Lounge in Miami in the Brickell area, doing a political event before that, but I will be there in the evening time, hopefully getting some FaceTime with their staff and owners.
And since we're wrapping up, we just want to make sure everybody knows, everybody that watches this broadcast, sign up with PCA at cigaraction.org. Cigaraction.org. All you got to do is put in your name and your zip code, and we take care of the rest. Keep you apprised on the legislative and political issues, the good, the bad, and the ugly in your given state, as well as what's going on in Washington. We all need each other. We got to grow the base, and that's the way to do it.
Yep, and that's entirely free.
And I'm glad you said that, because we were going to give you guys the opportunity for any of the retailers, manufacturers, or consumers that want to support the initiatives that you guys are fighting for us to be able to enjoy the leaf. How can they get a hold of you, either individually or just as an association at large?
Well, I think with the association, we have 2 main websites, premiumcigars.org, that's the overall association one, and then cigaraction.org that Glenn referenced. That's the advocacy portal. If you are a retailer, membership is open right now. You can join, as well as manufacturer, the associate membership. People that come to the trade show, all of the money that is made at the trade show through the booths and the membership goes towards advocacy, goes to the lawsuits that we fight, the legislation and regulatory fights that we battle. So we encourage folks that are in the industry as manufacturers and retailers to attend, as well as members of the cigar media. So we hope to see you all in Vegas in July 8th through the 12th. And consumers can get involved with us at cigaraction.org through that free resource.
And do you have any social media handles, a Facebook page, Instagram, or Twitter?
Yep, it's PCA 1933 is Instagram and Twitter. Premium Cigar Association is Facebook. We will post frequent updates on there, some of the action alerts that we're working on in the States. And Glenn and I are very approachable, whether you're a consumer or a retailer or manufacturer. Pick up the phone, send us an email. We want to hear feedback and criticism. We want to improve. We want to change. We want to adapt. We're not perfect. The association isn't perfect, but we've been through a lot of positive changes. We've been through a lot of hard times and struggles, and we've made it through. And, this year, building off of the success of last year, I think is in the words of Frank Sinatra, who I can't believe I didn't say I would want to smoke a cigar with him, the best is yet to come.
There you go. Well, I think that's a great segue into my last question for the show. In case you guys didn't know, we're in a magical time machine, okay? And we have the ability to go backwards and forwards in time. So I'm going to kick it over to Glynn. What advice would Glynn be giving himself from 5 years ago? And let's look at this from the perspective of the association.
Wow, this is deep tonight.
It's a growth
I
mindset
like
show.
these questions. We've done a few tough podcasts in the past few weeks, and I'm really enjoying this.
I'm not
Well, good.
kidding.
We're glad to hear that. And you know, the whole platform that we're on is to really help people become a better versions of themselves, right? And so with that being said, we want to look at this from an association perspective. If you could look back, and the Glynn who you are today can look back and tell Glynn from 5 years ago, what advice would you give him regarding the association and how to move more efficiently, better, faster, from back then?
All the above. Everything you just listed. I mean, even though I think, and I hope I'm not fooling myself, even though I think I always spoke with a sense of urgency. And I'll give you an example. My first industry meeting ever with all the manufacturers was April the 9th, 2009 in Miami. And the president had just signed the Tobacco Control Act. And everybody was arguing about S-chip, and S-chip had already happened. The state children's health insurance program taxes, which was the first time cigars were really in the federal crosshairs for in a political attack kind of way. And that meeting, I looked at them and I said, guys, S-chip was just practice. And to this day, Rocky Patel quotes that line, and he attributes it to me. And I looked at him, I said, S-chip was just practice, because what you're about to confront with federal regulation is going to make that look like child's play. So to come full circle to your answer, even though I felt like I always spoke with a sense of urgency, I'm not sure we as an industry did enough, or I did enough 5 years ago to really, really galvanize the masses in a way that we need them today. And that's where I was talking about, we're still evolving as an industry. And even as hard as Josh and I and Scott and all the team works day in and day out, I'm not sure too many, let me back up a little bit. Too many of our retailers have not absorbed that sense of urgency. They're comfortable, they're making a good living, they're serving their customers, they're open for business. Well, that's great and wonderful, but they need to operate that business with every day as if it's their last. And they need to be engaged in the political process every day as if it's their last. So if I had, even though I believe we've always worked hard and spoke with that urgency, I always feel like today we could have done more and been even farther ahead than we are today politically as an industry, able to defend ourselves. Even with as much as has been done, we're still a loose confederation, and we need to make it tighter. We need to make it more profound. We've got to get retailers in every single congressional district in this country to be galvanized, to be engaged. And we would be even farther ahead today if we as an industry had done even more 5 years ago than we already have. I'm not sure that all makes sense, but
no, it totally does. Totally does.
We every day has got to be a sense of urgency to defend the simple passion of enjoying a cigar. That's the way I'll wrap that part up.
So that's a deep answer, and it's a lot to unpack there. Probably a podcast that we could do on its own, right? But Josh, I'm gonna flip it over to you. You're 5 years older. What advice from an association perspective, when you look back to yourself today, what advice is that older version of Josh? What is he telling you today?
I think that there are two things that I wish, that I would grasp now and continue to grasp for the future and look back on. And I wish that the association was involved. And I think both of those are tied together. Really working on self-regulation, kind of putting the parameters for ourselves, and then going to the regulators and the elected officials and saying, hey, here, youth access isn't an issue for premium cigars, and we have this in place to ensure that it doesn't become an issue. I've seen other associations like the Motion Picture Association, they rate every movie. They provide rated R, PG-13, all of those things. I'd like to see PCA as an organization be at the forefront of putting proper checks to ensuring that problems don't arise in our industry without having government necessarily involved, because a lot of times the bureaucrats don't have the specialized understanding of that policy or how it can be implemented. The other thing is a little more tangible. Investing in diversified income streams for the association. So finding innovative partnerships, building coalitions, so that we can fund the advocacy in a more efficient way, and so that it's sustainable for many years to come. This is a very old association that's been around, going back pre-World War II. It got through World War II. And, so the resiliency of it's there. Cigar smokers in general are resilient against all the regulations and legislation that come their way. And, the association has had to be resilient in key periods of time. The pandemic was one of those periods of time that was very challenging for the association membership, for the association staff. And, I want to craft programs in the next few years that will afford the association the ability to grow alongside the industry so that we can provide that defense and protection, but also be proactive and create positive growth and do it in a way that we're able to fund where we need. I mean, we are, and Glynn can attest to this, our team is very small. We punch above our weight class, but at the states alone, last year we had to sift through 16,000 pieces of legislation, 16,000 bills. So that's not going to change this year. If anything, it might increase. So we need to grow and expand our staff and our capacity. It's tough because of resource constraints. If something pops up at the local level, we don't have the resources to fund a $100,000 lawsuit or send a local lobbyist. So there are gaps in our flanks that I'd like to fill. And I think that we have to have the resources in order to do that. So setting up, and it goes back to your earlier comment, creativity. And I think we need to get more creative there.
Yeah. Well, that's just as deep as what Glynn was saying. You guys certainly have your work cut out for you, but we totally believe in you and what you guys have done thus far. We're looking forward to many great things from PCA as you help to bridge that gap and obviously lobby and fight on our behalves. And so for one cigar smoker to another, we certainly thank you, not only for your efforts, but also for jumping into the lab with us. This has been beyond educational for both Mo and myself, and hopefully to all visionaries that are tuning in. Thank you so much for your support as you continue to grow this channel. Go ahead and like, subscribe, and share here on YouTube. And remember, each one of our guests are dropping nuggets of wisdom here on the Trail of Life. Ultimately, it's up to you to pick them up.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ryan Mosley. He is Ryan Cuffey. Thank you again to Glynn and Josh of PCA, Premium Cigar Association. And we will see you guys next week on another great episode of the Vision Lab podcast.
Blessings.